The rise of technology made it possible for us to carry thousands of writings and music on our smartphones and laptops. No need to carry a bulky book or an old CD player in your bag. It's that convenient. However, the experience from owning digital copies isn't comparable to that of actually having a physical one. By purchasing books and albums, you get a keepsake of art, which took months or even years to finish. Aside from that, you'll have the chance to engage with fellow book and music lovers as you go to libraries and stores. This feeling of being a part of a community is something Borders stores were known for. Their library cafe setup not only promotes a more engaged community, but also an entertainment-loving lifestyle. Books and music aren't only meant to be bought, but also enjoyed in their stores. This branding of Borders attracted customers and led them to become the second largest bookstore chain in the United States. The company didn't stop there as they proceeded to expand internationally, establishing bookstores in the United Kingdom, Australia, Singapore, New Zealand, etc. The fast-growing company became the next target of the CEO of Pershing Square Capital Management, Bill Ackman. In 2006, the activist investor purchased an 11% stake of the company. He believed that Borders was a strong lifestyle brand, which had the potential to grow further. Unfortunately, his involvement with the company was short-lived. What exactly happened? Founded in 1971 by brothers Tom and Louis Border, the company began as an independent used bookstore in Ann Arbor, Michigan. As the brothers were also students from the University of Michigan, they found opportunity in book retailing. Soon, the store became the source for materials of the universities and colleges in the area, while, for some, it served as a neighborhood hangout place. All in all, the Borders bookshop was well received by the locations in just a few years, one in Atlanta and another in Indianapolis. The bookstore chain's growth was also anchored by the system the Border brothers employed. The Book Inventory Systems, BIS, is their developed approach on tracking sales and inventory. Not only did they employ this strategy in their own bookstores, they also began selling it to others. The wholesaling business was a success as clients tried out the service in their stores. The Border brothers were already doing great with these ventures, yet they decided to experiment with a superstore-style bookstore in 1985. From a small, indoor mall-based location to a large-scale retail bookstore with a coffee bar. With this model, customers can buy books while having a matching drink, thus adding a bit more enjoyment in their search for good books. Once again, the concept was well received by the public, setting the company's net income to $1.9 million from their $32.3 million sales in 1988. The success of the Border Brothers Superstore chain led competitors to adapt such style. Borders didn't show any hint of slowing down. They remained a tough competitor as the book retail industry boomed during the 1980s and 1990s. Wanting to take it a step further, the founders decided to hire Harvard MBA and Drexel Institute of Technology graduate Robert D. Romualdo in 1988. They believed that the man's expertise in merchandising, marketing, and management would help the company's expansion, and so D. Romualdo became the president and chief executive the following year. Under D. Romualdo's leadership, Borders became known as the premier book superstore chain of the 1990s. The company's growth led department store chain Kmart to purchase Borders in 1992. The reason being their struggle with the mall-based book chain Walden Books, which Kmart acquired in 1984. The department store merged the two into Borders Walden Group as it tried to compete with rivals Barnes & Noble and Crown Books. Unfortunately, Kmart's own fiscal problems and shareholders urged them to spin off the Borders Walden Group, later officially named the Borders Group, in an initial public offering, IPO, in May 1995. The newly formed company acquired the highest sales per foot ratio in the industry, amounting sales of up to $1.5 billion prior to the IPO and $2 billion after which. By 1997, Borders operated more than 200 stores, at least 40 of which were in Europe, Asia, and Australia. However, things didn't go smoothly from there. The book industry, specifically big chains like Borders, struggled as it neared the 2000s. Independent bookstores filed lawsuits against big chains, claiming that their unfair deals with publishers discouraged competition in the industry. Not only did Borders face a hefty settlement payment, they were also suffering losses due to their website's discounts and incentives. When they removed such promos, sales would significantly decrease. If those weren't enough, the company also faced criticism from their shareholders, who believe the company's slow growth is rooted from the management's poor handling. The challenges Borders faced reflected their decreasing share prices, so they decided to replace Di Romualdo with Greg Josefowicz as the chairman. Under his leadership, the company managed to remain as the second largest U.S. bookseller. In 2006, activist investor Bill Ackman realized the company's potential success. With the store's remodeling and improving financials, he believed that Borders was undervalued at around $23.92 per share, saying that they were worth roughly $36, and so he decided to purchase an 11% stake of Borders by November of that year. Although the move seemed quite risky considering the rise of the e-commerce industry, Ackman presumes that online retailers like Amazon weren't a serious threat to the bricks-and-mortar store chain. He instead adhered to the well-educated and high-earning consumer base which the book retailer already had. He saw the store as similar to a mini-mall where people can shop, meet, drink, and hang out for hours. It wasn't just a place where you can buy a book or a CD. It was also a library cafe where you can engage with people having the same interest and a venue to meet your favorite authors. Ackman was convinced that Borders' strong branding would benefit them in the future. As news of the activist investors' stake got out, shares increased by 6.6%. Either investors were swayed by Ackman's words, or his credibility was something they held on to as they became shareholders. Years later, the economic climate left Borders struggling. Prices of necessities like food and gasoline kept increasing and taking a considerable portion of someone's income, leaving only a few to patronize bookstores. After all, you can't eat paper. The underperformance of the stores led Borders to sell itself in 2008. When the company failed to find a buyer, Borders issued 5.2 million stock warrants to its largest investor, Ackman's Pershing Square Capital, in October 2008. This gives Ackman the right to purchase the company's stocks at a given price in the future. That is, provided the terms of the warrant are met. With the $42.5 million loan they got from Ackman, the company managed to stay in the business. Unfortunately, they needed to cut some losses, closing hundreds of store locations and cutting off about 10% corporate jobs. Despite such efforts, Borders struggled to increase their share prices. By 2010, Ackman received the payment for the $42.5 million loan and held more than 30% stake in Borders. While this number might sound great, it really wasn't. Share prices at that time were only a little over $1, suggesting that Borders was nearing bankruptcy. In a bold attempt to secure shares, Ackman assured that the company's bankruptcy was a low-probability event. He also hinted that the two largest bookstores, Borders and Barnes & Noble, would combine operations in the future. These remarks resulted in a 36% increase in shares in February 2010. Later that year, Borders tried to merge with its rival Barnes & Noble. What's strange about this is a small company like Borders was trying to take control of a larger one. That's not usually the case unless a huge investor like Ackman holds about 37% of the smaller side. In December 2010, the hedge fund manager offered to shell out $963 million for the acquisition, offering to pay $16 per share of the company. It's actually quite ironic if you knew Ackman's history with Barnes & Noble. In September 2008, he held more than 6.5 million shares, or about 11.8% of the company. However, he decided to liquidate his entire stake by January the next year. Pershing Square didn't clarify whether it's the declining sales or its grim future that made Ackman pull off from Barnes & Noble, which makes the whole takeover quite confusing. Why would you purchase a company you left using another company with a penny stock valuation? Even professionals and analysts are having a hard time piecing a logical case behind the deal. Sure, combining the two can provide benefits as it increases the company's scale of operations. However, the acquisition wouldn't eliminate the real threat Borders was facing, which was the e-commerce industry. As technology and the internet flourished, more people opted to shop online than in bookstores. Amazon, for one, is one of the largest online book retailers, and its success is nowhere near where Borders was at. Ultimately, the deal went nowhere. By February 2011, Borders filed for bankruptcy protection as their debts amounted to $1.29 billion, a $20 million difference from their assets. Ackman, who held a 31% stake at that time, lost millions as the company failed to compete with the e-commerce industry and the economic climate. Obviously, Ackman undermining Amazon's threat played a role in the downfall of the second largest bookstore chain in the US. By September 2011, Borders closed its doors and ceased operations. Do you think the book retailer stood a chance if Bill Ackman was able to purchase Barnes & Noble? Let us know in the comment section below. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe.